Alright, so we are looking at grade 12 tax. Now, this is something that a lot of you tend to struggle with, and there's no real reason to struggle with it. It takes a bit of practice, but once you get it, you will be great. So, let's have a quick look at some of the things that you need to know before we really dive into this. Firstly, just terminology that they can ask you. They can ask you what SARS stands for. Now that is the South African Revenue Service. They are the people that collect the tax. They are responsible for tax in South Africa, for just keeping track of it and making sure that the government gets their taxes. Then you have your gross income or your gross income, depends how some people pronounce it differently. That is considered your income before deductions. I'm actually going to just underline that. Okay? Your net income is after deductions. Your net income is sometimes also referred to as your take-home salary. Right, that is what will get deposited in your bank account at the end of the day. Um, After that, we've got your taxable income. That is important for us. It is the income that is used to calculate tax. That is your gross salary minus pension minus UIF contributions. So there I've listed for you the non-taxable deductions. So things that the government does not charge tax on is UIF, pension, provident, retirement fund. Okay? The pension, provident and retirement fund is all three fall under the same category, and it's 7.5% unless they state otherwise of your income. That's what you pay towards your retirement fund. UIF is always 2% of your basic salary, so that is not even your gross income. Your gross income can include subsidies like housing subsidies or travel allowances. All of those things can form part of your gross income, but you still have a basic salary. That is just your salary without any deductions made to it and no additional um, benefits added to it. So UIF is the, surprised I haven't listed that, that is the Unemployment Insurance Fund. Let me make a note of that quickly. UIF, it is the Unemployment Insurance Fund. Okay. That is 2% of your basic salary that gets paid to SARS, 1% by the employee and 1% by the employer. So you are only responsible to pay 1%. It is capped. I'm not going to make mention of it here, but just keep in mind UIF is capped. Okay, there is a cap to UIF in the country. You cannot, if you earn millions a month, it's not going to take 1%. There is a max of around 170 odd rand, I think, from your side. And then the employer would do the other 170, so there's about a 340 rand saving being done in your unemployment fund. So once you get fired or whatever and you can claim your IF, that's where the money gets paid out from. Okay, I've written some steps down. So let's have a look quickly. This is the steps that we follow when calculating tax. Yes, the last time I dealt with this was in 2022, so that's the tax table I'm going to use. It's obviously changed, but the concept stays the same, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. So firstly, check if UIF and or pension is mentioned. They can also obviously replace pension with retirement fund or provident fund. Okay, so make sure that is mentioned. If not, then you're good, you can ignore it. If it is mentioned, calculate the monthly and annual contribution. You need to figure out how much goes towards that because that gets deducted from your gross annual salary because you cannot pay tax on it. It's not taxable. Someone's being silly outside. Anyway, then you deduct the annual amounts from the annual salaries and, well, there, I've just said it actually. It's not taxable, and that's how you get your taxable income. Again, UIF is 1%, and if not specified otherwise, pension, retirement, provident fund is 7.5%. Then check if they are part of a medical aid. Um, if they are part of a medical aid, you need to work out the medical aid credits from the medical aid tax credit table and times that by 12. You're going to end up subtracting that from their annual tax. So that gets deducted from your annual tax. Then check the age for rebates. If they don't specify an age, we're going to assume they're under 65 and they only get the primary rebate, which everyone gets. For over 65, we need to include the secondary rebate. That does not mean they don't get the primary one. They still get the primary one. They just get the secondary one as well. And then if they're over 75, then they get the tertiary. But again, doesn't mean they don't get primary. They get primary, secondary, and tertiary over 75 years old, which also gets subtracted. Now, rebates essentially comes from, yeah, I'll show you later where the rebate amount comes from. It is calculated according to a specific amount. Okay? You need to calculate the taxable income. We always need to know how much of your actual income yearly can you be taxed on, which is your gross monthly income minus your pension or UIF or both times 12, and then bonus if mentioned. So bonus would be, actually sometimes I call this your 13th check. 13th check. You do not pay pension or UIF on your 13th check. You do, however, pay tax on it. Okay, so that is why you take the gross monthly, deduct the pension and the UIF, times it by 12 to get the yearly income, and then add the bonus on top of that. That will give us our taxable income. And take note of the tax threshold. Sometimes they can try and trick you. I'll talk about the tax threshold and what that means in a second. And then lastly, check what bracket this person's going to fall into, and then just follow the tax table. Okay, so 2022, this is the tax table I'm going to be working with. I'm actually just going to make a copy of it and take it with me in a smaller version because I'm going to need it just now to do my calculations. Here is the rebates table. Let's just talk about that quickly again. You need to make sure which year you are working in, and then the rebate is money you get back from the government. It is relief on your tax essentially. It is partly based on the fact that you already pay tax, but there's also a link with a rebate, and yes, the rebate amount is calculated according to the tax threshold. I'll demonstrate that for you now. Because they can ask you to show how they find this amount, and they can also ask you to show how they find these amounts in the tax brackets. Again, this is a 2022 tax bracket. It gets updated every year. So generally, the percentages don't change. These values will change because these brackets will change. If I'm not mistaken, currently the first bracket is up to 300,000, not only 216,000. Okay, so rebates we've spoken about quickly. Secondary rebate gets given if you're over 65, but like I said, yeah, you get both primary and secondary. Tertiaries for people over 75, they get all three. The tax threshold, that is the minimum amount you need to earn to have to pay tax. So if you earn less than, in this case, 100, no, not 100, 87,300 Rand a year, then you are not going to pay tax. Okay. And in actual fact, if I'm not mistaken, the rebate is equivalent to 18% of the threshold. So essentially, if you on right on top of a threshold and you pay 18% of that, it's going to equal the rebate, which then subtracts and equals 0, which means you don't pay tax. Same goes here. If you work out a person's tax in this bracket, then it would be these two rebates added together would be equivalent to the person over 65, under 75, earning this amount a year, and so forth. And lastly, we also have medical aid credits. The taxpayer himself gets money back. It is, yeah, I've told you already, it's money that you get back for belonging to a medical aid. Remember, if you belong to a medical aid in general, you should not be visiting free clinics and government institutions. You should be going to private places because it is funded by your medical aid. So that is why you get the rebate or the tax credits. It's because you are then not a burden on the state. They don't have to pay for your medical care because you go to private places because you pay a medical aid. So they give you a little bit back because otherwise they would anyway just fund your treatment within those facilities out of tax money. It's only money that the government gets in. First dependent typically is a spouse, but it is anyone that gets added to your medical aid. So if someone is unmarried and they have a child, then the eldest child would be the first dependent. If they're married, then it would be the spouse. Okay, look at this acronym. It's actually an email address. westring@bssmarm. The Westring part does not matter. This part is what we want. At bssmarm. That tells us in what order we are actually going to do our tax calculations. It kind of links in with my steps. So the order is, we need to find the annual salary. And from there we need to find the taxable salary. So that's what the @ symbol is for. AT, annual salary, taxable income. Then B is the bracket. So you need to determine in which bracket they fall on the tax bracket table. Then you need to substitute the values you need to. You need to subtract inside the brackets parameters. So over here, income above 216,000. It will make more sense once we do this with an example. You need to multiply. You need to then add the flat rate, which is these values here is what I refer to as the flat rate. And then you subtract the rebate, subtract the medical aid credits, and then you get your yearly tax. Okay, but we're going to start it off very simply. I'm going to drag this with me. I'm probably not going to use it much, but I'm going to end up scrolling up and down to do it anyway. But let's see. Mrs. Jones earns 15,062 Rand per month. She is a single mother of two who pays medical aid. Calculate her monthly tax. So these are generally big questions, maybe 7, 8 mark questions. So what is my important things here? Firstly, obviously, her monthly income is important. Okay. It is important that she is single, and it is important that she has two kids and belongs to a medical aid. And then less important but still important, we want to go down all the way to the monthly tax. So you can't stop here when you've done the yearly tax, you need to get down to the monthly tax. So first thing we need to do is calculate her yearly income. Now remember, they have not specified anything with regards to UIF or pension, so we're going to assume that it does not exist. So let's start there. Yearly, you can say yearly income or annual income. Yearly income is going to be the 15,062 Rand and 50 cents times 12. Again, it's a year, so times 12. Let's get the calculator here. So 15,062 Rand and 52 cents. No, 50 cents times 12. And that's going to give me 180,750 Rand. So that is 180,750 Rand. Okay. Again, they did not say anything about UIF or anything, so that is also going to be her taxable income. Make a note, Jeffy. I will tell you here, since no UIF or pension, the yearly income is the taxable income. Okay, so that is her taxable income. So what do we need to do next? We need to now, we've got all of that, we need to determine what bracket she's in. 180,000, well, that falls right in the middle of, well, towards the upper end of the first bracket. So then we can calculate the annual tax. I'm not going to do that just yet. Oh, actually, let's do that. I'll show you different ways you can approach this. You could have already calculated the medical aid now, and all of that you could have calculated now, but you can also do that later. Let's do our annual tax for now. So what does it say? It says 18% of her taxable income. So this being her taxable income, we just need to take 18% of that. 180,750 Rand. Okay. Obviously, with regards to the percentage here, you can either use the percentage sign on the calculator, you can use 18 over 100, you can use 0.18. There's a multitude of things you can do. I'm going to just use the percentage sign, and it's going to tell me that her yearly income, or not income, her tax is 32,535 Rand. Okay. Now this is a full tax. We haven't taken rebates, medical aid credits, none of that into account. So firstly, let's list a rebate. Now they didn't give you her age, so we're going to assume she's under 65. So I'm going to use her rebate here as 15,714 Rand. So let's just make some notes here. This is bracket 1. This is only the primary rebate. Then we're going to do medical aid credits. Okay, let's see. She is a single mother with 2 kids. So like I said already, she is single. So that means the first kid will take the first dependent's place, and then the second child will be an additional dependent. So she's going to get 332 Rand for herself. Then for her first dependent, she gets the same. And then for the second child, 224 Rand. Now remember, this is monthly. Okay? Just remember this is monthly. So let's see. I'll just again make some notes here. This is her as the main member. This is first dependent. This is additional dependent. So let's add those together quickly. 332 plus 332 plus 224. 888 Rand. So that is the almost relief she gets from her tax for being part of a medical aid. So annual, I'm not going to stop here. I'm going to times it by 12 already and see what her annual rebate is, or relief is 10,656 Rand. 10,656 Rand. Yes. Okay. Now we can actually work out her total annual tax, because we know how much tax she has to pay. We know the rebate she's getting. We know the medical aid credit she's getting back, and there's nothing else that we have to worry about here. So let's have a quick look. Annual tax, or let's say total tax, is going to be let's leave the Rand symbols out here for now. 32,535 Rand. That's the total tax. She's going to get the rebate of 15,714 Rand. And she's also going to get the medical aid credits, 10,656 Rand. So again, this is the annual tax. This is the rebate. And this is the medical credits. Obviously, you do not have to make those notes on your scripts, just for your benefit now. Okay, so then we can do that calculation. Let's do that quickly. Let's grab this. And that. So that ends us up at 6,165 Rand. So let's see. 6,165 Rand. That is the total tax she is going to be responsible for. Okay, but now the question is not done. They wanted a monthly tax versus an annual tax. So make a little bit more space. Let's say monthly tax. That is going to be the 6,165 Rand divided by 12 months in a year. So let's see, divided by 12. And she's going to end up paying 513 Rand and 75 cents in tax. Okay, and that covers this first question. I'm actually going to get rid of this just because I end up scrolling up and down anyway. That covers the first question. Short of excluding the medical aid, it could not be simpler than this. There's no UIF, no pension, no funny business. Yeah. Like I said, there are other ways of doing this. You could have done it in one step here. If you moved this down and you did first took note of a rebate, calculated the medical credits, and then did it all in one step here. You can do that. You could also have not done the yearly medical aid, and you could have actually just subtracted the 888 after dividing by 12 here. So if I had taken just these two values, subtracted them from each other, divided by 12, and then subtracted the 888, I should get to the same answer. Okay, let's look at the second one quickly. Mr. Hay earns 39,000 Rand per month. Him and his wife, as part of a medical aid, calculate his monthly tax. Now this is going to work pretty similar to the previous one. I'm going to do it in a different order so you can see that it is possible. So I'm going to start it off this time with his medical aid and medical credit. Yeah. Let's first just go back quickly and highlight. Here's his monthly income, him and his wife. It's part of a medical aid. Again, no UIF mentioned, nothing else mentioned, and we want monthly tax. So medical aid credits. Him and his wife, I can go all the way up. It's just a person and a dependent. They're both 332. So I'm just going to say 332 plus 332. You can bracket this off and times it by 12 already to get the annual if you want to. Or you can first see what the monthly one comes down to. Let's do that. 332 plus 332 is 664. And then I'm going to times that by 12. So he gets a total of 7,968 Rand in medical aid credits. Okay. Then, next up, let's look at the annual salary. The monthly was 39,000 Rand times 12. See what that is. It's 468,000 Rand. Okay, again, no age mentioned, nothing. So we're going to assume that the rebate is only the first rebate. You can list it here if you want to, you don't have to. You can just include it in your calculation What was my rebate? The primary rebate is 15,714 Rand. Oh. And let's just put all these Rand symbols where they belong. And now I skipped a couple in the previous question. Now it's bugging me, so let me just go put them in there. There we go. Okay, so there's this rebate. Then we've actually got everything to calculate his annual tax. Okay, annual tax. Now, I don't know what's the last thing I copied. Let's see. Tax table. Good. Let's just look here. 468,000. That is going to fall just over the third bracket. So that's going to end up in this bracket. I wonder if I can crop this. Yes, it's going to allow me to. So let's crop it. It's going to fall here into this bracket. And let's actually just make it smaller. There we go. So this is the bracket that it's going to be. This is the fourth bracket. Okay, so, wait, that's a little in the way. Let's just move this down. So tax-wise, he falls into the fourth bracket. Now, how do we use the fourth bracket? We pay the flat rate. So he is going to pay 110,739 Rand plus 36% of, I'm going to put it in brackets just so that it looks a bit neater. He needs to pay 36% of anything above 467,500. So I'm going to take his entire yearly income and I'm going to subtract the bottom range, or the top range actually, from the previous bracket. That's what this is. So 468,000 is what he earns. I'm going to subtract this amount from there to see how much more he earns, because he's only going to pay 36% of that. Okay, so that will be, that sorts it. If I leave it like that, that's his tax without anything being done. Okay, to that I can subtract then his rebate. And I can also subtract his medical aid credits. Okay. Before I go type it in, let's just check, do we have everything? Yes, yes, yes. So let's go type this in. I'm going to do the 110,739 plus 36% of 468,000 minus 467,500 minus the primary rebate minus the tax credits, the medical aid credits. Which means the tax that he still needs to pay is going to be 87,237 Rand. Okay. Now again, they wanted monthly tax. So then we can go and say monthly tax. And that's going to be this amount, his annual tax divided by 12. So we get 7,000 269 Rand and 75 cents. Okay, there is two of them. This question, I'm going to ignore this one. I'm going to get rid of this one. There's a very similar one that I'd rather do. This one. Okay. This one has something else in. We can maybe look at that. Okay, let's hop back here. Wait, which one did I delete now? Oh, it is the one I want to get rid of. Okay. This is a question I love to ask. They ask you how they determine these values. Okay. And these values are actually quite straightforward how they determine them. They use their own system. So they take this top end of the bracket and they do 18% of that. We can go and see what 18% of that is. So 18% of 226000 times 40,680, which is what we get here. Then, let's store that value. Then they go and say, okay, how do they determine this value? And again, they use their own system. They're going to use this with the top range of the bracket. So they're going to keep this 40,680. They're going to do 26% of everything above 226,000. So let's say 40,680 plus 26% of all of it. So 353,100 minus this 226,000. And the reason we subtracted is because this 40,680 is already 18% of the 226,000. So we just need to now find out how much above it they are to do 26% of that. And we'll get the 73,726 Rand, which is this. And you can actually just cascade down like that. You can find all these values. So to find this value we just did, to find this value, which is what they wanted, they're going to use the bracket here. This was found by using the previous bracket, and this was found by using the previous bracket. So they build on top of each other. So I'm not going to complete this question because, well, I might as well, I'm already there. You are just going to use the third bracket and the top range of the third bracket. So all I'm going to do is tax. The third bracket is 73,726 Rand plus 31% of everything over 488,700 Rand, and they're going to use this top end here. Okay. Or actually, no, we're going to use the bottom end, sorry, the top end of the previous one. So 31% of 488,700. Okay. So let's take that. That's the answer I've got there. We just need to add the 31% of 488,700. Oh, sorry. Not the amount I need to use, I still need to subtract the bottom end. Let's just subtract here. It is going to be the 488,000. Actually, the top end of this, sorry. It's been a long day. So 641, 400 minus the 488,700. Okay, let's just fix this quickly. This is 73,726. This is 641,400 minus that amount. Oh, that's not good. What am I typing wrong? 48,700. 641, 400. Oh, not 31%, 36%. Sorry. It's going to say. Change quickly. 36%. And still not really. What else can be wrong? 73,726 plus 36% of everything. So the top range above I'm using the wrong bracket. I'm being silly. It's okay. To get this amount we want, we need to use the third one. So it is actually 31%. This amount in the front is correct, but it's going to be the top amount of that bracket minus this amount, 353,100. And there we go. Okay. Should have stuck to my instincts and said I'm not going to finish it. Let's just fix this. 31%. This needs to change. This moves. No, wrong place. Wrong place as well. 18. Here we go. This needs to go here. And we are subtracting the 353,100. And that's going to give us the total of 115,762. You can see I haven't done this in forever. Okay, like I said, I am skipping these two. The only difference that would make this a valuable question is that they donate to the Red Cross. Charitable donations is also not taxable. So let me actually go all the way to the top here and add here non-taxable would be charity. Charity is also not taxable. So since in this case this person, Laura, would be contributing every month to the Red Cross, you're going to times that by 12 and that would be subtracted from her taxable income because it is not taxable. Okay, so let's look at Mr. Nell. Mr. Nell is 45 years old. He earns a gross salary of 39,550 Rand per month. He pays UIF and pension. He also contributes to a medical aid scheme and is married with 2 young children. Calculate his monthly tax. Again, let's get what's important. 45 years old, primary rebate only, monthly income, he pays UIF and pension. He also is part of a medical aid. He is married with 2 kids. Calculate his monthly tax. So, let's actually start him off by just taking note of what we've done here. This is to say that it's only the primary rebate. They haven't mentioned anything else, so that's 7.5% of his income. Here is 1%. This would be main member plus first dependent plus 2 times additional dependent. Yeah, that's all we really need. So let's get started. We need to find his annual salary. So 39,550 Rand times 12. See, 474,600 Rand. Yeah. Then we need to calculate his pension contribution, and we also need to calculate his UIF contribution for the year. So let's do that. So UIF we know is 1% of his monthly or his annual income. We'll get an answer, we'll do that now. I'm actually just going to write out the one for pension as well. Assuming 7.5 because I didn't mention anything else. So 1% for UIF, 7.5% for pension. And those two values cannot then be deducted. So let's see. 474,600, and we want to see what 1% of that is. It's 4,746 Rand. And we also want to see what 7.5% is. 35,559 Rand. 95 Rand, sorry. Okay, so there's his pension contribution. We can also, before we do that, I'm going to do his medical aid credits as well. This time I'm going to do it in one step, so I'm going to say 12 times, and I'm going to bracket it off. We know it's him, a first dependent, and 2 additional dependents, so let's go see. For him, he gets 332, first dependent 332, and then the additionals 224. So there's going to be a 332 for him, 332 for his wife, 224 for his one child, 224 for the next child. So this will give me my total medical aid credits. 332 plus 332 plus 224 plus 224. 13,344 Rand. Okay. So there we've got his medical aid credits as well. So we've done everything we need to actually, except calculate his taxable income. his taxable income is going to be the 474,600 minus the UIF amount minus the pension contribution, because those are not taxable. So let's see what we get. 474,600 minus 4,746 minus 35,595 rand. So he is only allowed to be taxed on 434,295. No, not 95, 59. Being dyslexic again. Okay, so that's all of it that we need. You can again list his rebate, but you don't have to. So then I'm going to go straight into one big calculation for his annual tax. Annual tax. Okay, firstly we need to go and see in what bracket this falls. Okay, my brackets aren't full. We're looking at 434,000. So that's going to fall in the third bracket. Okay, let's actually just go grab the tax bracket again so I can crop it and leave it there for us to work with. There we go. Let's do this. It's going to fall within this range in the third bracket. There we go. So that's the bracket we're going to use. Let's put it up here. This was the third bracket. Okay, so for his annual tax, what does he need to pay? 70,532 Rand. Into that, we need to add 31% of everything over 337,800. So we're going to take his taxable income and subtract the 337,800. Okay, that's going to give us his total tax, but I'm doing it all in one step. So we're going to take his primary rebate that he's getting, 15,714 Rand. We're also going to take his medical aid credits for 13,334 Rand. Oh. Oh, that's all fine. That's all fine. Yes. That's all of it. So let's type all of it in one go. We've got the 70,532 Rand that he needs to pay plus 51% of 434 259 minus 337,800 minus the rebate minus the medical aid credits, which means he ends up paying 71,000. Let's put it down here. 71,376 and 29 cents per year. So lastly, his monthly is going to be this amount divided by 12. 5,980, no, 48 Rand and 2 cents, rounded to 2 decimals. And that's his monthly tax. You can have a look at this one. The only main thing, like I said here, is the charity is not taxable either, and they are over 65, so primary and secondary rebate. I would suggest you have a look at it, and we can look at it next time.